Life is full of surprises. Some we call blessings, others we call disasters. When things go wrong, we panic. When things go right, we celebrate. But few of us realize that every moment is only a single page in a much larger story. Sometimes what looks like bad luck is only the beginning of something good, and what feels like success might be hiding a lesson in disguise. This story will show you why true peace comes from patience, and why a wise man never rushes to judge what life brings. In a quiet valley surrounded by misty mountains, there lived a humble farmer named Han. He wasn't rich, but he was known for two rare treasures: his kindness and his calm. His small house stood beside a patch of green fields, where he worked from sunrise to sunset. Han's hands were rough from years of planting and harvesting, yet his heart was gentle. He shared what little he had with his neighbors and never spoke ill of anyone. His greatest joy was his teenage son, Lin, a cheerful boy with eyes full of curiosity. Together they lived simply: one horse, a few chickens, and a field that gave them enough. One early morning, Han went to feed his horse and found the stable door wide open. The rope hung loose, and the hoof prints led straight into the forest. His only horse, the one he used to plow the fields and carry goods, was gone. When the villagers heard the news, they hurried to his home. "Oh no, Han," they cried. "Your horse has run away. What terrible luck! How will you work your land now? How will you bring food to market?" Han looked at the empty stable, wiped the sweat from his brow, and said softly, "Maybe." The villagers were shocked. "Maybe? What do you mean, maybe? You've lost your only horse?" But Han simply smiled and went back to tending his crops as if nothing had happened. He didn't curse his fate. He didn't complain. He just kept working quietly, as though he trusted something greater was unfolding. Days passed. The villagers pitied him each time they walked by. Then, one evening, as the sky turned orange and the cicadas began to sing, a thunder of hooves echoed from the forest. Everyone looked up, and there was Han's horse, galloping home. But it wasn't alone. Behind it ran 3 wild horses following closely. The villagers ran to Han's house, shouting and laughing in amazement. "Han, you're so lucky! Not only did your horse return, but now you have 4. They clapped his back, congratulating him on his sudden fortune. Han tied the horses gently, gave them hay, and said quietly, "Maybe." The villagers blinked. "Maybe again? You're too modest." But Han wasn't pretending to be humble. He knew that life often hides lessons behind gifts, and that today's gain could become tomorrow's loss. The next morning, Lin woke early, excited to train one of the new wild horses. "Father," he said, "if I tame them, we'll be able to work faster and maybe sell one." Han nodded but warned him gently, "Be patient. Wild things need time." Lin smiled and ran off, full of confidence. The horse he chose was young and powerful. At first it trotted calmly, but when Lin tightened the reins, it reared up and threw him to the ground. A sharp cry echoed across the field. Han rushed over to find his son clutching his leg, twisted and broken. They carried him home, and for weeks Lin lay in bed, unable to move. When the villagers heard what happened, they gathered once again. "This is awful, Han. Your son won't walk for months. What terrible luck." Han looked at his boy resting under the flickering lamplight, smiled sadly and said, "Maybe." The neighbors shook their heads. "He must be pretending to be strong," they whispered. But Han wasn't pretending. He had simply learned that judging the moment never changes the outcome. It only steals your peace. A week later, soldiers rode into the village. The king had declared war, and every healthy young man was ordered to fight. Families cried as their sons were dragged away, the air filled with fear and the sound of horses leaving. When the soldiers reached Han's house, they saw Lin's leg wrapped in bandages. "This one cannot fight," said the captain. "Leave him." And just like that, Lin was spared. That evening, the villagers returned once more. "Han," they said, "you are the luckiest man in the valley. Because of your son's injury, he was not taken to war." Han looked up at the night sky and said softly, "Maybe." The people stared at him, confused again. But deep inside, Han felt a quiet gratitude, not for escaping fate, but for understanding that fate itself was never his to control. Seasons turned. The war dragged on. Many who had left never came back. Those who remained alive carried grief heavier than any harvest. The village grew quieter. Children played less. Fields were overgrown. But at Han's house, peace seemed to live in the air itself. He rose with the dawn, worked steadily, and cared for his son, whose leg healed slowly, leaving a faint limp. The villagers began to notice something different about Han. Whenever a storm ruined the crops, he stayed calm. When a good harvest came, he celebrated modestly. No matter what happened, his face carried the same gentle expression. One day, a young farmer asked him, "Old Han, how do you stay so calm? When things go wrong, you don't complain. When things go right, you don't boast. What's your secret?" Han smiled and placed his hand on the young man's shoulder. "When something happens," he said, "I do not label it good or bad, because I do not know yet. Life is like the weather. A storm can destroy crops today, but it can also bring the water that saves them tomorrow. If I call every storm bad, I will spend my life afraid of the rain." The young man thought for a long time before nodding. That night, he told his family what Han had said. And slowly, those words began to travel, from house to house, from heart to heart. Years passed. Han grew old, and Lin took over the farm. The people of the valley still remembered the farmer who had faced every twist of fate with patience. Whenever something happened, a drought, a flood, a lost cow, or a sudden blessing, someone would smile and say, "Maybe," in honor of the old farmer who had taught them calmness. Over time, the village itself began to change. They no longer cursed the rain or prayed away the storms. They stopped measuring every event as good or bad. They learned to wait, to trust, to breathe. And in that patience, they found something Han had known all along: peace. We never see the full picture while we're standing inside it. What feels like failure today might become the reason for your success tomorrow. And what feels like success might lead you toward a deeper test. Life has a way of hiding meaning behind time. The wise farmer's lesson is simple yet powerful. Don't rush to call anything good or bad. Just say maybe and keep walking your path. Because life's plan is much larger than what your eyes can see. When you stop judging each moment, you start finding peace in every moment. And that peace, quiet, patient, and steady, is the greatest luck of all. If this story brought you calm, share it with someone who's facing uncertainty. Remind them that every twist in the road has a reason, even if they can't see it yet. I'll be back soon with another story to help you trust life's timing. Till then, stay patient, stay peaceful, and remember, sometimes maybe is the wisest word of all.